Hello students, lesson Understanding the Livelihood Vulnerability Index. The main chapter of today's lessons are to define the core of livelihood and vulnerability index components such as socio-demographic profile, livelihood strategies and social networks, health, food and water. The second objective is to make you understand the implementation of livelihood vulnerability index calculation protocols using household survey data, normalization techniques and balance averaging across even vulnerability dimensions. The third objective is to make you understand the construction of composite LVI IPCC indices mapping exposure, sensitivity and adaptive capacity for district level climate risk profiling. And the fourth objective is to compare the livelihood vulnerability indices applications across households dependent on agriculture, fishing communities at the coast, pastoralist communities, etc. with the help of case studies all across the India. And the last and the fifth objective is to assess the methodological strengths, limitation and consideration of livelihood vulnerability index along with its integration with planning framework focusing on adaptation. So students, let us start the discussion. The Livelihood Vulnerability Index developed by Han et al. Is a composite measure that helps to assess household susceptibility to climate variability and extremes by taking into consideration 7 livelihood dimensions. This index proves to be particularly helpful for geography students, enabling them to analyze different regions, especially monsoon-dependent agrarian landscape and rural areas. Grounded in Chambers and Conway's sustainable livelihood approach emphasizing 5 capital assets: human, social, natural, physical, financial and IPCC's vulnerability framework, decomposing risk into exposure, sensitivity and adaptive capacity. LVI operationalizes these concepts using household survey data accessible even in data scarce region characterizing 72 least developed countries and India's 640 climate vulnerable districts. Students, the vulnerability of the masses depends upon the prevailing livelihood arrangements. It enables the policymakers to profile the climate vulnerable groups and focus on the interventions. An example is in mountainous areas where livelihood vulnerability index can emphasize on low accessibility to markets or steep slope which hamper agriculture or on lack of water. In the coastal areas, it might expose susceptibility to cyclone, tidal debacle and coastal erosion. In dry areas, livelihood vulnerability index can be water focused and put an emphasis on the reliance on climate dependent livelihoods such as raising livestock. The key points of the index of livelihood vulnerability is the first, a step-by-step explanation. LVI has a strong point in the fact that the components of LVI are comprehensive. All of the large components reveal information of a critical area of household and neighborhood vulnerability. In this context, socio-demographic profile is most important. This element is used to measure the predisposition traits of households as they affect their vulnerability. What are the key factors of this? The key factors include household size, age structure, dependency ratio, education level of house head, gender of household head, access to basic services, large size households, high dependency ratio and low level of education are usually susceptible because they have less ability to earn income, use new technologies or recoil swiftly to shocks. Students, there might be extra limitations to the female headed households based on economic, cultural or institutional factors. Now, let me explain to you the livelihood strategies. Livelihood strategies are defined as the variety and breadth of activity that are performed by the households to earn their living. What are the indicators? The indicators include number of income sources, reliance on activities of climate sensitivity, availability of other livelihood, seasonal migration, employment structure, communities with high dependence on one type of livelihood like rain-fed agriculture are at risk compared to those which have diversified sources of livelihood like livestock, veg work, small-scale businesses or remittance. Diversification increases the adaptive capacity since risks are spread in various income streams. Let me explain to you the first aspect, that is health. Health is one of the essential aspects of human well-being and a significant measure of vulnerability. The significant indicators of health aspect are frequency of illness, access to health service, sanitation facilities, access to health care professionals, high chronic diseases. Students, disease decreases output, high health costs and diminishes adaptive capacity. Health services are bad in rural or remote places, which make people sensitive toward climate shocks, particularly disease outbreak due to water scarcity, temperature change or severe weather. Now let me explain to you food vulnerability. Food vulnerability is directly connected with food security, especially an agrarian economy. Indicators of food security include availability of household food, frequency of food shortage, dependence on bought food and an alternative to home-grown food, access to markets, seasonal food variability. Societies that rely on crops that are climate dependent can be affected by drought, flood or an epidemic of pests regularly. Students, vulnerability can be decreased through market access, which helps in purchasing food even in periods when production is low. Students, now let me explain to you the Livelihood Vulnerability Index methodology. What are the geographic and climate vulnerability applications? The choice of indicators and the gathering of data for this kind of analysis must follow participatory rules that are carefully chosen to fit the field of geography. To gather time-sensitive climate exposure variables during household survey, for example, n is equal to 120 minus 200 per village cluster, a 7-day recall period is very much required for this particular assessment. The result can help to understand a lot of things like how collecting water for more than 45 minutes a day shows that groundwater is running out, or how eating less than 3 meals a day shows that the monsoon is not working. Life histories also show long-term health problems that are linked to heat stress and changes in the environment. There are many important sources of data that suggest important insights. These could be things like lists of assets that keep track of drought-resistant crop types, livestock breed that can survive with little food, and tube well ownership that shows how and where irrigation is used. Students, the Indian Meteorological Department's climate data also gives us district records that go back many years and include monthly observations.